So what we'll do, for those of you who are at your first meeting of this committee, it's called the Cooperative Relations Team. This was done at the request actually of the county board a couple of months ago to discuss the future of the economic development position, the existing agreement for the Simon Center, and also at the time we were talking about the state of the bridges for the entrance points to the campus property and future repairs that might be needed. We've kind of covered that, so that's no longer on the agenda. But what you've got here tonight, you've got myself and 2 alderpersons from the city council. There are 3 members from the county board appointed. I believe Mr. Brewer's on his way in, so we'll have 2 of them here, and 3 members of the red board, because of course the agreement that created the economic development position, which was done in January of 2020 between the city and the county, is the agreement that also created a red board. So any amendments to that agreement obviously impact the construction of the red board in its future. That's why they're here with us tonight. So what I will do, while we wait for Marty to come in, we might as well get started. I'll call to order the city contingent, which is the 3 of us, myself, Melanie Walters, Carson Culver. I don't think I'll take roll. We're here. And while Marty finds his seat, Mike, you want to do the same for the red board?
I'll call to order the Richland Economic Development Board. Present Al Lenz, Carrie Honer, and myself, so we have a quorum.
Marty.
Watch your up here, man. Even made a name tag for you. Wow.
Okay. All right. And then Melissa Luck, I believe, is not here tonight. Representing the county, we have who?
Ken Reddish, Marty Brewer.
Ken Reddish and Marty Brewer. Okay. Okay, meeting is called to order. Was this meeting properly noticed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 1 is approval of the minutes, which you've had a moment to review. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 9th.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reddish. Any discussion of the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Minutes are approved. Okay. Item 2 is discussion and possible action items, and it reads cooperative agreements between the City of Richland Center and Richland County related to Simon's Recreational Complex and economic development. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with Mike, okay, to discuss the red board here. So for the moment, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, are we discussing red or are we discussing Simon?
Well, I'm on economic development at this point, so do you have anything to say on that point? Or do you want to start? We can start with Simon. I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to, you gave us this document. Who composed it? You composed that?
Yes, but it was worked on by Al, Carrie, and I.
Fair enough. Okay, why don't we start there?
Okay, so let's turn to the Simon's Natatorium. Suggestions from the red board for the reorganization of that. So I want to acknowledge again Al Lenz, Carrie Honer, and myself got together and spent some time reviewing the existing document and considering the future of Simon's. The second thing I want to say is that we all want Simon's to succeed. We consider it a community gem. It is very important to the community, and so the plan that we put together was our best effort in recommending items that might move forward the ongoing success of Simon's. The third thing I want to say is I'll be referring at least partly to a document that probably nobody here in attendance has, but the folks up here should have a copy of the cooperative agreement between the county and the city that created the Simon's board. So I apologize that you don't have a copy of this. I'll try and make an effort to explain it as we go. Okay, so I'm going to read, I'm going to refer to a document that we put together, meaning Al, Carrie, and myself put together. We reviewed and are putting this forward as a recommendation for the city and the county to potentially adopt and implement for the sustainability of Simon's. So it refers often to the existing agreement, so I'm going to point us to number 1, which paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the existing agreement all have to do with the conditions that existed in 1987 that created the agreement between the city and the county. It talks about floating bonds and the way it would work with the county and the city. We're recommending that all 4 of those paragraphs be struck. In other words, they're out. They don't exist anymore. Point number 2, and by the way, if you got questions along the way, please interrupt me and make it known. Point number 2, a new cooperation statement similar to the red board structural document should be created, and that's that understanding of the roles of the city and the county, what the authority they have, what responsibilities they have. That makes it very, very clear. One point in there that there would be no deficit spending without the express approval of the city and the county. In other words, the city and county make a budget, there's no deficit spending beyond that, therefore there's no surprises by anyone. Well, where did we get this bill? That's part of what we are addressing in all of this. Capital improvement monies for Simons, which we recognize are needed, would come from other sources, and we'll address that a little later in the document. Point number 3, the governing board. So this, if you're following along in this original structural document, it's on page 2. The governing board includes city government, county government, and community members. The board will administer the Simons Natatorium facility. The board will become a working board as well as a policy board. So in the next statement, we'll make specific recommendations for the change of the board. One of the biggest changes, though, would be that the board members are taking an active role. In other words, they're not just making policy or deciding on the programming of Simons. They're actually taking an active role in promotion in the community and some of the affairs of the board. I know this is probably a big step. This is one way to show the investment of the board in wanting to see the success of Simons. Number 4 is the makeup of the board. So in the original document, under paragraph 5, the makeup of the board, I'm just going to go over that really quickly, what it is now, and then the proposed changes. The makeup of the board was 9 members in the original document. That included 2 county board members, supervisors, the county board chair, so that would make it 3, the mayor, and 2 city council members. And then there would be 3, they call them members at large, community members. Then there's the Richland Campus Foundation as a member on that board. And then the administrative staff of the University of Wisconsin system has a member on that board. So that was what makes up the 9 members. Clearly, some of those things are not relevant anymore because UW-Richland at the moment appears to not be functioning. I mean, at the moment it is, but the plan is for it not to be. So with that fluidity, it doesn't make so much sense to have them on board anymore. So here's the recommendations from our Red Board group. That the board shall consist of 7 members as opposed to 9. The mayor, the county board chair, 1 city council member who is an active member of Simons, 1 county board member who is an active member of Simons, and 3 community members who are active members of Simons. That would make it a 7-member board. We would recommend that if you want to stay with the 9-member board, that it would still add 2 more community members rather than have government officials. It's not that we don't have confidence in the governmental officials. We feel that people in the community who are on that board will spread out the base and be willing to work to create the success of Simons. That was our thinking. Okay, point number 5 on the document says the term of the board members. This is pretty standard. The mayor and the county board chair are, of course, ex officio, so they're on the board based on their position as elected officials. The county board member and the city council member, excuse me, would be appointed by the mayor and the county board chair on an annual basis. And then the community members would have a 3-year term that could be renewed, they could be re-elected. The board members from the community would be elected onto the board by the board. Additionally, we kind of spelled out in letter G of point number 5, the Simons Board shall be a working board. In addition to oversight and policy, it shall assist in marketing, grant acquisition, membership drives, community surveys, public relations efforts. We didn't put it in there, but any other thing that they're needed to help with. So we've got an active working board. That means it's a much higher commitment to be on the board, but they are making it work. They're invested in it. The Simons Board shall work to create a culture of ownership and excellence. In other words, people wanting to be there and be part of it and calling it their facility and their programming. So that means promotion of Simons. We put a couple examples on here like the Simons Shark Swim Team and other Simons programming that would be part of what they're promoting in the community. Number 6, which is paragraph 7 in the original document, has to do with the powers and duties of the Simons Board. We suggested removing paragraph B, the second paragraph, which has to do with the overspending of the budget. So that would conflict with the earlier statement about having no deficit spending. Well, it's not necessarily overspending, it's discretionary spending that's outside the budget. We're saying that that's probably not a good idea. But, you know, these are suggestions. And there's a paragraph or a sentence that was very confusing in this paragraph that talked about the director, Simon's director, looking for the exact wording, well, it's up here, exclusive use of the facility. We didn't really quite understand what that even meant. That would be the Simon's director. Number 7, which refers to paragraph 8, instead of gifts going to the Simons Board, we're having them go to the Simons Foundation, and that will be explained in a moment why they would go there. Number 8, this suggestion sheet is a termination clause be added. In other words, how could the city and county legally terminate their position? It's not that we would want them to, but right now there is no clause to that effect. We suggest that it could be similar to the clause in the Red Board structural document. Then we make statements about the Simons Foundation Board, recognizing that the city and the county do not have the authority to tell the Simons Board what to do, but making this as a suggestion for the Simons Board. Now this is the Simons Board, Simons Foundation, not Simons Board, I'm sorry, Simons Foundation. So this is the group that supports Simons by collecting money, and I don't really know exactly what they do all together, but I know they help with buying equipment and help with memberships with people who can't afford memberships. Okay, so this is what we recommend for the Simons Foundation. There shall be no less than 1 member of the Simons Board on the Simons Foundation Board, and not less than 1 member of the Simons Foundation Board on the Simons Board, so they each have at least 1 person sitting on each of the boards so that there's good communication between the two. Number 2, the Simons Foundation shall take responsibility to raise funds for all capital improvements for the Simons Natatorium facility. The funding goal would be based upon annual and 10-year projections. For example, $100,000 per year for 10 years. Seemed like maybe a reasonable goal to us. B, donations from individuals, organizations, and other foundations, especially the Simons Family Foundation, which this facility is named after, and they give a lot of money to other entities. Seems like a good place to go. B, grant acquisition and grant writing. We know that there's no personnel for that now, but we have some suggestions later on about that. Letter C, estate planning to leave bequeaths to Simons. Letter D, IRA distributions following age 70 and a half for individuals. Letter E, establish a 10-year capital improvement goal. Letter F, identify specific needs and cost. Letter G, establish useful life of equipment and capital items. Letter H, establish remodeling and redecorating goals. And letter I, establish equipment replacements. So that's the Simons Foundation Board. The next area is marketing. marketing. So this is what we're suggesting with marketing. Number one, create a substantial social media marketing effort. Presently, Simons has 1,500 Facebook followers. The Aquatic Center, the City Aquatic Center, has 1,700. Anytime Fitness, 1,500, and Fitness 14, 1,400. Simon's goal should be to double Facebook following and create significant social media presence on other platforms, especially those used by youth and young people, such as TikTok, Snapchat. We already had Facebook and Twitter. I don't think I put Instagram in there, but that should be in there too, Instagram. Letter B, update social media posts multiple times per week. Social media gets stale within hours usually, and you have to post and post and post. C, exchange Simon's memberships for people who will work social media. The goal would be to leverage skills in social media in exchange for membership. Accountability to work social media would be necessary, and that may also be the possibility with grant writing. If somebody's really invested in wanting to see Simon's go, maybe they'd exchange a membership for grant writing. Number two, occasional marketing via traditional media, newspaper, shopping, news, and radio. I do not want to diminish them, but the truth of the matter is most young people do not go to those traditional forms of media. Number three, create niche special promotions such as lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks. Join Simon's Sharks at 20% discount for the next week. Silver Sneakers 1,000 Mile Club, and I gotta admit I don't even know what Silver Sneakers do, so that was just kind of out there. Okay, number four, market to the schools in the area to learn swimming and use for PE classes such as Richland Center High School, Ithaca, Weston, Riverdale, and perhaps even others. That would generate additional income. Number five, conduct a market survey that identifies what people at various demographics would want in order to patronize Simon's fully. This is to be a one-on-one meeting, face-to-face, with people to ask specific questions and obtain useful answers. In other words, it's not a mailed survey, it's not an internet survey, it's actually people going out and doing it, and the board would have to do that and probably recruit others to do that. I did a little of it myself, just as a test run. I talked to 18-year-olds. I had about a half a dozen 18-year-olds, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. And they gave me a comprehensive list of what they wanted to see in order to, and it didn't take them long. I spent about 15 minutes with them. And they could tell me exactly what equipment they wanted, what spaces they wanted, and how it would work for them so that they would be drawn there. It was very enlightening to me. I had no idea. Okay, finally we examined the possibility of turning the Simon's facility over to another operating entity. So number one, this might be a long-term goal but seems unlikely in the near term. Number two, the two options that seem possible: A, create a separate 501c3 corporation to operate Simon's with subsidy from the city and county for 5 years or more. B, contact the YMCA in Madison and La Crosse to examine their interest. C, put the facility up for sale. This would be a difficult sell. So that's the summary of our proposal. I know that some of these changes would be fairly dramatic, others are somewhat mild. We think it's probably not the most realistic to expect another operator to come in at this point, but that may be if they had planning time. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, you already got something, I don't know, it looks like it.
Okay, at this point, since we're on that point, Melanie Walters sent me a text today. What did you want to tell everyone?
So I had, let me just get my notes up here. I had a very nice discussion with Mike Westover. He is the director of the Madison area YMCA today. I had reached back out to Bill Soper, who is the La Crosse area YMCA director. Him and I had had some conversations previously, and then it just kind of fizzled out. And he emailed me back and said, at this time, we just don't have the resources to take on another facility. But here's the contact information for Mike in Madison. And then a few minutes later, I get an email from Mike, I would love to speak with you.
Hmm.
So I talked to him for probably about 40 minutes today. He actually read the Simons minutes for the natatorium from 2019 to present before he called me. So he, I got to give credit to Tracy. He said those minutes were immaculate. He goes, you guys are very detailed in what you discuss at your meetings. So he was pretty happy with that. But he had a lot of questions. So if you guys don't mind, I have like 6 points that I was interested in kind of running over with the group to kind of see what your responses were. Because he said that depending on the information we give him back, he may actually be interested in coming to Richland Center and touring Simons and having a little further discussion with us personally.
Okay, a couple of points. For anyone who doesn't realize it, Melanie is the chair of the natatorium board. That's why she was the one who reached out to the YMCA. But also, I would like you to go over those points because I want the committee to hear, but also these folks that are here because Simons is on the agenda.
Right.
I'm going to have them here, and in a minute, we'll pass the mic for public comments, okay?
Okay, so the first thing that he pointed out is he said, you guys have a pool. And he said, the first thing you need to understand is he said, a pool is a money pit. You will never make money off of a pool. But he said a lot of the other amenities that Simons has to offer, he said, would generate revenue, and he sees a lot of potential. So his first question was, what's the status of the gymnasium? Is there still the possibility that the gymnasium could be added to Simons? That piqued his interest immensely if we would say yes to that, because he said adding a gymnasium to an existing rec center would open up a whole new segment of revenue chains. So he asked if, and I said, I'm pretty sure they do, but I wasn't 100%. Does the county own the Simons building and the land that it sits on? Correct? You guys do? Okay. He said that point makes him a little nervous because at any time the county could say, we're going to sell the land or we're going to bulldoze the building or whatever. So he said if this was something that both the YMCA and the city and county were interested in moving forward, he said they would either be interested in, depending on the conditions, purchasing or doing a lease agreement. His next question was about the future of the UW campus. He said if it ends up it's being like a definite thing that the UW is withdrawing from Richland Center, what are the plans for the land and the buildings? Because he said that is going to have an impact on Simons if they just sit empty versus if other businesses come in there. And then again, what offerings Simons could have depending on what would go into those buildings. He asked about the community center in Richland Center, the community and senior center, and he says, is that part of Simons? And I said, no, that's completely separate. But we did talk a little bit about the park and rec program. He wanted me to find out, and this is something I can kind of work with Tracy on, is does Simons and the park and rec program offer any programs that would be competing with each other? Where parents would have to make a decision of, do I sign my kids up to do this at Simons or the same thing through park and rec? I don't feel like there's anything off the top of my head, but I told him I would double check. Then he was wondering, is there a possibility that there could be a cooperative agreement formed between the city and the YMCA if they took over Simons to utilize the community center for different things where maybe more space would be needed? Because he said the YMCA currently offers day camps, they offer after-school programs. So if there wasn't sufficient space at Simons to either have the gymnasium or an agreement to use the community center, again, would open up those additional revenue streams. So this is the one where I need the big thumbs up or thumbs down from everybody. he is very interested in seeing financials for Simons, expenses, revenue. He said, I have no issues signing a non-disclosure agreement, that it is for his eyes only. But he said that would give him a little more insight to make kind of a determination of if they would like to move forward with pursuing any continued interest. So, I guess since we got the
It's
the
an open,
people in charge.
it's an open record request.
It's public record.
Okay. Okay.
Not an issue.
Can you make it look prettier though?
I mean, add the numbers there.
Okay, so it shouldn't be a problem because it's public information anyway.
I just wanted to double check, you know, I didn't want to speak out of turn, and so again, he said that once we kind of get some more information together and back to him, and he has time to look over the financials, he said if it looks good and it's something that they're interested in pursuing, then his next step is he would want to come out here and actually walk through Simons, meet Tracy, kind of, you know, find out a little more detail, the day-to-day stuff that goes on there. I asked him if it was a concern of how far away we are from Madison, because that was one of La Crosse's concerns, and he said not really. He said that he came on to the Madison YMCA about 4.5 years ago, and they were in a really rough financial spot, and they reworked their whole financial strategy, and he said, oh, obviously COVID hurt them like it did everybody else, but now they've really bounced back, and he said they're actually in a really good spot financially now. So,
Okay.
anything else you guys can think of that maybe I should throw his way for information?
Could I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
So one is he looking for specific market data, population draw, demographics that are needed for this, what it would take to make it operate?
Some of that he is, but the big thing he wanted to start with was finances, to kind of see like what our budget is every year for it, versus, you know, revenue versus expenditures, so that he can kind of get an idea of if they decide to take this on, what's it probably going to cost them? Because obviously the money aspect's going to be the largest piece of this.
So did, in terms of the finances, did he indicate what kind of margins they need, or how much? I know it's not technically a profit and loss, it's an income and expense, but did he indicate what they need in order to make this work?
He did not. He had said that he did ask me if the city and county would be interested in possibly still contributing some money towards Simons. I know, like, when I spoke to Bill in La Crosse, he said what they do with Bigley Pool in Viroqua, because they took it over from the school district, is the school district actually pays a fee every month, a management fee to the YMCA. And then their agreement states that any overages in the budget, the school district has to cover. So they have to always have some money tucked aside in case there's an overage. So I believe what he was presenting today, asking if it was a possibility, was kind of a similar scenario. Would the city and county be interested in kind of paying a management fee every month, and then maybe setting some money aside for any overages or potentially assisting with capital improvements?
Did he give, I'm trying to clarify myself, the gym out at the campus versus the community center, is it a situation where if they had the gym, they don't need the community center, or were they wanting both?
If they had the gym, they would not need the community center. But again, I said, I couldn't tell him what's happening with the gymnasium at this time. And so then he asked about the community center, and when I said, well, that's owned by the city, he said, well, would the city be interested in doing like a cooperative agreement to utilize the space for such things as day camps or after-school programs if needed?
Do we know if those programs would compete with what the city offers now through Park and Rec?
That's one thing that he wanted me to look at, was to to kind of get him a list of what the programs are. I just kind of rattled off a handful of them that I could remember from when my kids took it. But I said, you know, we've got a whole brochure, and I know that Jenna has an electronic version that I was going to get from her and just forward to him so he could kind of see all the programs we offer during the summer.
The naming, so it's Simon's Natatorium or whatever it's called now. They, I'm sure, want to change the name to the YMCA. It's not in this agreement, but I'm wondering if there's any requirement that Simon's name remain on the facility?
It could be. We didn't even get that far in the discussion.
Okay.
I was literally talking to him over my lunch hour, so I was like, I gotta go back to work. Thanks.
How about timing? How much time would it take for them to actually come in and start operating the facility?
We did not get to that point either. Right now, it's just kind of, he just wants a little more info before they make the decision of if they're interested in moving forward. Because again, the National YMCA said there cannot be, right now, they stopped new YMCA charters. So we can't just become a YMCA ourselves, we have to join an existing YMCA. So that's why he wants to get all this information, because if it's not worth their time and money, then they're not gonna do it.
Is that point why we needed to be talking to La Crosse or Madison?
Correct, because
Okay.
they're the closest to us.
Can we touch on this, and if you have the information, or Tracy does, whoever does, in Viroqua, their situation, where they were with their pool and where they are now since they affiliated with the YMCA, do you want to touch on that for me?
You're asking me to remember things.
Okay.
I believe they said that so the YMCA actually, the employees become part of the YMCA. So they are paid by the YMCA, their benefits are through the YMCA. And if I remember correctly, without digging back through my notes, that they have seen increased membership, increased revenue. I don't remember Bill saying anything about them having any type of deficiencies in their budget, except obviously during COVID.
So when they reached out to the YMCA, though, I believe that's because they were having financial issues up there. That's what I'm getting.
They were, I believe the school, for a time, did they actually have to shut the pool down, or?
It was, yes,
Or they
it
were
was
going-
closed.
Right.
So not the current mayor in Viroqua who was elected last April, his predecessor, I called her on several occasions, and one of the things she told me was that they lost their pool, and it was because the city didn't have the money to contribute. That's what she told me. So I absolutely believe that pool was closed for a time, I don't know how long, and that led to them reaching out to the YMCA, and that's kind of what got us on this path. What we're doing is looking for every possibility for funding for the Simon Center. The point is, keep the Simon Center. That's the point. So no stone unturned, right? What are the options out there? And when we heard a neighboring community had done this and they seemed to be happy with it, Melanie pursued that, and this is the information we got back. If you have any more, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to open this to the committee a little bit.
I guess I just need to know, and we can discuss this first, I guess I just need to know from, both sides, the county and the city, are you guys okay with me going ahead and getting all of this information together to give back to him, to see if this is something that they even want to pursue? Because obviously I'm not going to make that decision on my own for everybody else. That's not appropriate. So I kind of wanted to see what the group had to say.
Okay, so at this point, let's just hear from the folks on the committee. Ken, what do you think of all that?
I think we need to go forward we're in a tornado right now with the campus and Simons and everything that's going on. We don't have a definite plan. We don't know where we're going to land out of this tornado, so we can't disregard any opportunities at this time. So I would be in favor of definitely going forward.
Marty Brewer?
Yeah, there's a lot of good that I heard here, a lot of positives. And I really congratulate our county employee doing this over her lunch hour. We're impressed by that. And yeah, we should give them what they want. This is all public record, and he was impressed with the minutes that we've had over the last several years, so I think he has a pretty good inkling of what we're spending and what on, but, yeah, let's get it to him.
Melanie, did you have anything else before I skip across?
The only thing I wanted to say is, to Tracy, is we were discussing at the last Simon's meeting about pickleball.
Oh.
And the first thing he says to me is, do you guys have any indoor courts? And I said, we have racquetball courts. He goes, racquetball's out, you gotta bring in pickleball. That's the future. And I said, that's interesting, we just discussed that as our last meeting, so.
Now, Lynn?
I would say it's okay to explore it. I would ask him, the gentleman from Madison, if they'd be willing to share their 5-year financial data with us. You know, to see what, you know, as you shared, you know, they've had a turnaround. Well, I'd like to know what they did
Right.
and how that translated into the numbers on the financial statements. Because, you know, there may be something we can learn from that here.
That is true. And I'm sorry, just to back up, that is the other thing he did say to close out our conversation, is he said, even if we decide not to move forward with this, he said, I would be more than happy to give you guys some suggestions on what you could do to kind of bolster your business. So he was willing to do that even if the YMCA decided not to move forward with it, which I thought was pretty nice of him.
That's all I got.
Okay, since my chair is next in the line, I absolutely think we should pursue it because it might be a viable option, but we don't know if it is. But we need to know if it is for further consideration. So for my input is yes, I think we should continue this with this gentleman, Mr. Carson Culver.
I think it's very positive. I am trying to anticipate what the structural hang-ups might be, and that's why I was looking at you, Marty. I think that one of the beginning points, if you're going to really deal with this at any critical level, is the county and the YMCA has to have a common understanding of the use of the building and property which the county owns. And that was one of the questions I wrote down here, Mike, because I wasn't sure. And that might include separating parts of the campus. If they want to run a day camp.
Simon's is separate
Okay.
right now from the
Well,
campus.
but I'm thinking if they want to run day camping, maybe the hill up behind or near the courts or something like that, you might have to consider that stuff. That's just, I'm thinking off the top of my head here. And then the city is going to have to, it looks to me like the city would be in the position of a budgetary contribution per year. Would be its big input because it's really a county YMCA contract fundamentally. We would want some input on what goes on there. And in terms of our own grounds and parks, the more they work together, probably the better they are. Because I thought to myself, if they got any kind of camping program going on in Madison, what better place to come camp than in Richland Center? These kids. That would seem to me to be a real draw to Madison YMCA. So I think it's positive, and I think we should move ahead. If the county's interested, I guess you got the lead in my mind.
I know this, that we cannot continue the way we have been, because I think when we saw the deficiencies, as we call them, or it was a shock to all of us. But then we looked at the financials for capital improvement and everything for the last 20 years. And really, it was millions of dollars. However, like the man said, we're running a pool. Pools ain't cheap, and they cost money. And I do have experience in skimming and cleaning pools. And if my
You're hired.
You're on the board, man.
well, if I'm on the committee and it's a working committee, then
Okay.
I love it.
Mr. Brenninger.
So I congratulate Melanie on the contact and the positive results. I would not have expected it to be that positive, so that's very good.
Yeah, I was not either. I was like beaming when I got off the phone. I immediately text Todd and Ashley, and I was like, I can't wait to tell you guys about this great conversation I just had, because it was unbelievable. I mean, he was even asking about like the Pine River Trail and
yeah,
different things
kayaking.
for like the day camps and
Mhm.
stuff, so.
Excellent. I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be asked, so I recommend that it be pursued to the fullest extent with every question we could possibly think of and every scenario that could possibly come up, so that nobody is surprised if an agreement is entered into how this is going to work. In our recommendation, we said that if there is another entity coming in, it would probably require some kind of subsidy from the city and the county for about 5 years. So I still think that, I don't know about Al or Carrie, but I still think that that's probably a likelihood.
For the members of the public, in case you don't know this, the last time this group met, Melanie had been trying to work with folks in the La Crosse YMCA and had some interaction. And we don't know why, but the gentleman up there just stopped responding. Wouldn't return calls, wouldn't return emails, just disappeared. So to Mike's point, I wouldn't have expected that to be so positive and come so fast. I think that's what he's reacting to. Just a couple weeks ago, we were in here going, geez, La Crosse won't even call back. And now we got a hold of Madison, and that's the first contact with Madison, I believe.
First one?
Okay. Carrie Homer.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that's great news that you got somebody that has an interest, see what he has to say. And if it's something that they don't think is viable for them, at least then we know.
Right.
And then we can move forward with another plan. My only thing is, it might, suggested about surprises, maybe something to ask them, is just because I've seen mergers, how does that affect the current employees at Simons? Like, if they're going to come into management, are they going to still keep and maintain the same employees, or do they have their own that they want to change up, just with no surprises for the employees?
Okay.
Ashley Oliphant is actually not a member of this committee, but you certainly are engaged in what the city's doing. Do you have anything you'd like to say on this point?
I'm just very excited about it. I can see all kinds of things that could be accomplished with a collaboration between Tracy or the MOY and the community center. I think it's really, really exciting, the potential that this could create for the community.
Mr. Langwick, would you like to comment? I'll bring you the microphone, sir.
You can use that one. I echo Administrator Oliphant's comments. I think it would be a good thing. Very curious too to get Tracy's feedback as we kind of go through the process too, to get her understanding and her take on it. So, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to pass this microphone around the members of the public. I'm going to start with Tracy since you just got called out by the administrator. Sir, okay, what I'd like, whatever you're comfortable with, stand, sit, however you're comfortable when you speak, but when you do, just please introduce yourself so everyone knows who we're hearing from.
I'm Tracy Gobin. I'm the director at Simons Recreation Complex. I didn't know exactly what you guys were doing today, so I actually came with my own little proposal. Melanie brought up the YMCA of Madison, and there's some, I think, interest there, which is great. I think the big thing to take too is, like everybody echoed here, ask the questions. I would say, but let's not do this too quickly. Let's take the time. We need to pause, take a breath, make sure we get all the questions answered, that everything is in place. We don't want to just like, this sounds great, and dive into the deep end, and guess what? The water's not all filled up when you hit the bottom, right? So, I think that's the big thing. We have to be careful, take a breath, slow down, make sure it's not moving too quickly, too fast, too good to be true kind of thing. So just thinking on that for that. I also came up with kind of a little suggestion as well. The Red Board, I think, started some great conversation with their piece of the proposal that they did for the board that was asked of them. I had a suggestion too because I'm not exactly sure, I think I got a little bit more idea tonight, but I was kind of looking to see what is the city's goal for the Simons Recreation Complex. Is it to get out of the whole tax levy? Is it just to, get the capital improvements taken care of? And then same question for the county. What is the county's goals for the future of Simons? What are they thinking? And then get the community of Simons involved, because there's a lot of members out there that love this facility, and there's some here tonight. There's others that we have that love that facility so much. Get those members together, those community users of Simons, the Simons Foundation users together, staff members of Simons, and have the discussion like what the Red Board did. And use, I mean, the Red Board has a good starting point here, so those would be also, you know, things that we could add on to, but get the ideas from some of the members that are using the facility, the staff members that have been there at the facility, and the Simons Foundation members, and to give them a chance to also come back with a proposal to the city and the county on what they're looking for. But I think they would just need some kind of clear goals of what you guys are looking for from the city perspective and from the county perspective to see what it is, and kind of echo to kind of what the director from the YMCA said. Pools are not income bringer earners. They are a little bit of money pits. So like Sauk Prairie School District, they have a tax levy as well for their swimming pool. It's an indoor pool. It's year round. So it's not just Simons that has to use tax levy dollars. Lots of indoor pools also have the tax levies. So that would just be kind of a suggestion proposal that I kind of had as gather up the users of Simons, not all of them, obviously, but a select group of them, some members of the foundation, members of staff, and give them a chance to look over the items and use the suggestions as well that the Red Board has put forth as a great starting point.
Hold that, Mike, for just a second. Does anyone up here have any questions for Tracy before she passes the mic down? I guess not. All right.
Oh, I have one.
What? There we go.
Marty, you probably know the answer to this. The parking lot, is that included in the, I don't know how the lines are drawn out there, so how would that be part of the negotiation as included in Simons, or is that separate to the rest of the campus, or what?
Go ahead.
So currently what I have of the footprint of Simons, so what's not included in the lease agreement for the state, for the campus, is the beginning of our parking lot. We've got a blue sign out there. The parking lot is included in it. It's more of like a circle. Our parking lot's a square at the end, a circle there, and then there's a driveway that goes behind Simons. The grass from that driveway up to the building is part of the current footprint of Simons. The grass from the campus sidewalk to our building in front is the Simons footprint. I think it's about 10, 15 feet on the side of the building, around towards the library is part of the Simons footprint, and as soon as I step out the back door of Simons, I have no land.
Well, first of all, I think it'd be handy for this committee to have a picture of the plat, not just a general map, but something that's really visually good with the lines on it. That would be really handy if we're going to get into planning these kind of things and talking them over. And the second thing then, what about the tennis courts? Are they separate, or are they part of that complex?
They are part of the campus footprint. They are not part of the Simons Center. We do get questions about them, and we lend out basketballs for folks to use on the courts. We've lent out tennis rackets and balls over the years for folks to play with on the courts, but the campus has maintained, well, the county owns them, so between the county has maintained them, but the campus is in charge of those courts.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
Actually, can I ask you a quick question? Just remind me, how many full-time and part-time employees do you have out there? You know, off the top of your head?
Full-time employees, there are 3. The director, the assistant director, and the maintenance supervisor. And then part-time staff, when we're fully staffed, more closer to probably 50 part-time staff. Lifeguards, we usually like to have about 20 when we're full staffed, and we haven't been that way for quite some time, but yeah, instructors, swim lesson instructors, fitness instructors.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Tracy. Barb, would you like to speak?
I would like to say a couple words.
Yeah, no problem.
My name is Barb Wentz. Also, I'm trying to save the campus, so I want everybody aware It's not a done deal. We're working on something right now, so we're hoping to change. But that's being very positive. I know that cannot, but we are working very hard. Also, Simons, you know, I was on the board, I was on the foundation board that Simons gave that money to, and it did support Simons. It also supported our campus foundation quite a bit. And I just want to also mention that, yes, the pool doesn't make any money, but you go and talk to all those seniors. This community is made up of seniors, not young kids. They need that pool. Not a pool that's open 72 days for the young, where the city owns, that put lots of money in it. But a pool that's open 12 months of the year for rehab, for seniors' growth. Remember what the city is made up of, okay? I like to see young kids here. I love kids. But I think you better take the big picture here.
And
What's
Barb,
really
by
going
extension,
on.
that's true for the whole county.
That's true.
Mhm.
Not the city, the whole county.
Mhm. So,
But there's a lot of money out there. You know, Don Gray met John Simons. You just think what he and died and gave to the city. Do you have anybody else here that could do that? Yes, probably. But you gotta work it. And you gotta have somebody to do it. That's all I want to say.
so hold the mic a second. You were a campus employee when Simons was built, correct?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, and Darlow, your husband, was the mayor.
Right.
So-
You notice his name on the, he's the one, it was a bad time. Tom Oates was our dean,
Right, yeah.
okay? And we met with Merlin Mary. He was the county board chairperson. He was not for Simons at the beginning, but Tom Oates worked him down. I was at many of those meetings. And Darrell came up with the idea that they would split the overrun between the city and the county. That's all that came about. Otherwise, we wouldn't have what we have today. And Darrell thought it probably, well, it'd be 5 years and everything will be fine, but that doesn't always work that way. And it didn't. But I think we have great ideas here. I think Mike Brenninger brought up some great ideas. You know, I love working, so I'm working a lot. Even though I'm not really, but I enjoy working, yeah. And I think, you know, again, I would go with Madison too, to just check, because it only can help us,
Yeah.
okay? Any other questions?
Anybody have a question or comment for Barb? Thank you, Barb.
Grace, do you want to say something? This is Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace Wan. I just moved here from Richland with my husband last year in August. Right. It's very new to me, and all those kind of issues is very totally new to me. But I really, you know, I like the idea Melanie just talked about. Is the turn the racquetball to pickleball because I'm a pickleball player, and I think that's a very good idea, and that's fit the you know, because there's not many people play racquetball, and more people play pickleball. And I sometimes, if senior center is not available, and I will go there to practice, because yeah, I think it will be a very good idea, because I recruit a lot pickleball players from Simons. I love it. So we can think about that. We can learn, and we can try. Yeah, before to do something.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you very much.
I'm Gary Duconnett. I've been
member of Simon since 2008. And they had mentioned a little while ago that Mike had talked about the young people, what they want, and she mentioned the older people, which I'm a part of, but I've always thought that Tracy, and before Tracy, Denise made Simon's a place that was a family and not all-inclusive just for older people or younger people, because I remember the time when the campus was there, the older people, they like to get up early in the morning and go when the kids and the campus kids didn't want to be there. And as the day changed, the demographics changed. And I just hope that Simon's doesn't become something exclusively for young people or old people, but it's for all people. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Gary.
I'm Rose Byer, and I wasn't going to speak. I'm actually an employee out there, very part-time, but I have learned how much Simon's really means to people in this community. Myself as a member, but just it is really a social need for people. I would probably echo what Barb has said, that the population in this community just really needs that. I like the ideas. I guess we're not Madison, but there's possibilities there. And I'm like Gary, I would like to see it remain as a family service.
Thank you.
Hi, I think most of you heard me before. I've been a member originally for like 38 years now. I need it. I know lots of people need it to keep the body moving. I respect everything said here, all those ideas. Somewhere there's an answer. Somewhere there's a fix. We gotta make it work. Now here's my commercial. If you are not a member of Simon's, you can help be that fix. We need the money, your membership. Come and be part of us and help us with the fix. And the rest of this we will. Somehow it will all mold together. I have faith that Simon's will survive. It might have a different look than how I have seen it for 38 years, but you leave my treadmill somewhere or my bike and I'll be okay for a while. Until I retire from work, I'm kind of limited to where I can go out there. But come be part of us. Please, we need your support. It's a win-win. You win because physically it's going to help you physically and mentally. And the financial end of Simon's wins in your membership. Thanks.
Thank you. Sharon?
Really have nothing to say other than it's a positive, and I'm all about positive for Richland Center.
Thank you.
Sharon, yeah. My name's Tim Beaver. I wasn't really going to say anything. I was just going to sit back and kind of listen to everybody's comment. This is all kind of new for me, and I just kind of wanted to hear what was being said. I do have a question, though. I know that times are hard, but who or both groups really driving to eliminate funding for Simons? That's my question.
Marty, do you want to comment on the county's position?
I didn't catch the question totally.
The question is it a joint effort to not support funding for Simons, or is it specifically the county?
Well, it's part of our budgeting process, and we were concerned with many things that the county spends money on, and the proposal was part of a resolution perspective. Simons, look at yourself. Can you figure out a way to be fully funded, self-funded, and that on and on and on it goes. And this is part of that, I guess. No decision has been made at this point.
Yeah, first, to back up, almost a year ago in June, I delivered a conditions of the county report that talked on the healthy portfolio of different services that are being offered by the county. County is in a position where they're solvent. They put together a 5-year plan now based on some reductions to what are considered more mandated types of services and maneuvering some funds into short-term borrowing versus operations. Makes it work, and it's solvent. One of the resolutions that Marty was talking about was presented myself and offered to the county board and the finance and personnel committee, which essentially directed Simon Center to, underneath the pretext of funding is going to stop at the end of 2024, you have this time to figure out how to continue services in there by working with partners, working with YMCAs, working with other things that aren't going to impact county levy type dollars. That was not received in full as recommended by myself, by finance and personnel. It was modified to a kind of a statement to encourage exploration, which Melanie and her committee went out and did. They delivered a report back, and so that's kind of where we're at now, is trying to figure out yet what other solutions can be done to help put the county in a position where their levy dollars are going to be able to maintain mandated types of services and support their discretionary services to the best of their ability. Does that answer your question, sir?
And what is the city's part on that, or are they following suit because finances are there from the county?
Well, the situation is, the agreement that has existed since 1987 says that it's jointly funded, city and county. If the county were to withdraw from that, the city has a big choice here. Fund it, all of it, or don't. We don't want to get caught in that position. Honestly, I don't want to make that choice at all. So before you get there, what can we do, right? And so start looking around. Barb's point about who in the community might be willing and able to contribute money and so on. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're talking about the YMCA up here, but literally any viable funding arm. What came up, so the county, as everybody here is aware, went through a long process. Maybe they would do a referendum on the spring ballot, which would help them fund a lot of things. And they reviewed a lot of things that levy dollars are spent on and chose not to do a referendum. But during the months that was being debated, one of the things that came up is perhaps after 2023, the county wouldn't fund Simons. So at the city, we said, well, then we need to find somebody else to help right now. So before we get down that road too far, that's where we're at. Our whole position at the city is simply find a way to keep it, period. And I to everybody's point about how many people use it and need it, I fully agree, and I think everybody on the city council does, and that's why we're going through these steps right now. So we've never said we didn't want to fund it, didn't want to keep it. We're like, well, if the county does it, can we afford all of it, for one thing, and then, you know, how do we prevent from ever getting to that point? And that's what we're trying to do. Carson, did you want to address that?
Yeah, first of all, the city contributes half the operating costs, I believe, and the county, the other half of the operating costs. At present, the county is the fiduciary that manages the fund and basically submits a budgetary bill to the city. Plus, we contribute to structural costs. I think we just did some things last year. I don't understand pool stuff worth anything, so whatever, painting the pool or something or other out there, whatever, new water, whatever it is.
We redid the pool for it. We redid the pool for it.
Okay, so that's kind of historical origin, and what happened is we ended up with two crises clashing here. One is the closing of the campus, which put that into a turmoil, and that was an announcement from the regents, right?
Not the regions, one man.
Whoever it was.
Jay Rothman. That's the only one that made that decision.
Okay.
And he has admitted as much.
Yeah.
He absolutely has.
So that put the whole campus into a budgetary situation. County owns the property, the buildings, and they have a lease, I believe, with the university.
With the board of regents.
With the board of regents on operating the thing. So there's a situation. And then Simons itself, because of COVID, has had a couple rough years, and it's on that campus, which involves it with whatever happens to the campus. So it's kind of like a Gordian knot. And when the county came to the city with budget arrears for Simons, we conveyed it to this ad hoc committee, which included the Red Board, which looks after economic development, and they were in the same budget crisis in economic development. because of the county budget. So that's kind of the structure that got set up here. And the goal is solutions, working out. And I think, as you heard, I'm not aware of anyone on the council that is in favor of Simon's going away. You know, I think it's very valuable. And I don't talk to anybody in the community that wants it to go away, especially older people who used it. And how quick they'll come back, that's another question. So that's give you historical background.
I understand that. So if for some reason the YMCA doesn't go through, what is Plan B? Would, I know Mike had, Mike had stated that the city or the Simon's board would have to raise, was it $100,000?
That'd be the foundation.
So the foundation would have to raise that? Would the city be willing to raise or donate half of that as funding? I mean, obviously I don't know what your numbers are that you're paying as a joint membership with the county, but would the board raise half of the $100,000 and the city take on the other half as a second viable option?
So at this point, that would be a question for the city council to answer, to vote on and answer. And there's 2 of them here, there's 8 that would decide that. Right now, the city's paying about $35,000 a year, and the county is too, and then splitting, you know, the roof, the HVAC, these things that have come up. It's possible. I mean, they would vote at that point on that. So, but Plan B for me is more along the lines of what Barb just said to me. She's not the only one who said it to me in the last 10 days. I know there are some people talking to friends and all of this on their own about who might be willing and able to help, and we'll hear from them. Some of them that are helping are snowbirds, and they're not here to come here tonight. They didn't want to talk to us yet. To me, I want to hear from them too. When you ask what's Plan B, how about 14 of them and find the best one? I mean, nobody's down to this at this point yet. I wish we were, honestly, but right now today the information came from the YMCA, so we'll go with that. I mentioned there's some people working behind the scenes on who their friends are and who might want to put money in. Sure, yes, we could run it through committee to the city council, you know, if this, then that. We just haven't gotten that far with it yet. That's a good question. Anything else?
Not at this time.
Okay, can we get the microphone back to Tracy?
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I want
sir.
to segue off from that. The one thing that you've got to bring in the discussion all the time is it's one thing where we're talking about the operating budget, but as Administrator Langrick had said in our first meeting, we're looking at capital expenditures that we know of, 50 to 60,000 a year every year for the next 4 years. The air handlers. I mean, they've done projected capital necessary improvements, and that's really the worst thing about this. The operating budget, I think we can handle. It's the future non-ending capital improvement projects that are going to cost us.
Okay, Tracy, let's talk about memberships at Simon's, okay?
Yep.
Where are we at versus where we were? 2 points before COVID is one, but the other one, so you've shown us a report about what went on last year with a couple of points in the year.
Yep.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
You're talking about the revenue part
Well,
of it?
yes, and then just expand on that. So I agree with the people that said, so everybody says we want to keep it, so get a membership if you don't have one. I have one. I agree with that. So where are we at with memberships right now?
We are not, so the natatorium board, the reports I've been giving to the natatorium board, we compare, typically in the past, we always compare it to the year prior, but instead of comparing to the year prior, we've been going back and comparing to prior to COVID. So going back to 2019 as our goal to get back to 2019, because during COVID, I mean, the beginning of the pandemic, it was you're not supposed to go anywhere. You're not supposed to go work out. Locker rooms are a horrible place. Don't go there. You can't swim next to each other. I mean, so when we opened back up, it was, you know, very limited. Everything was very limited on what folks could do. A lot of folks found different ways to work out. They changed, you know, what they did. So the coming back from COVID has been slow. And then that, you know, the first couple of years so far here, we saw swings up and down, kind of roller coaster ride with memberships increasing, and then COVID would increase in the community, and folks would stop going out and going places, and so included not going to the gymnasium or the fitness facility and swimming pool because of that, because of the roller coaster of the increased cases. So we haven't made it back to the prior 2019. We've been steadily, slowly getting there, not at any rapid speed. This year seems to be, so 2023 here seems to be the first year since COVID here that I feel like we had the New Year's rush that we've had before in 2019 and 2018, the years in the past, where fitness goals are usually one of the #1 January resolution goals. So really have felt that, you know, push this year where we're seeing more people come in. Last year with the county, you know, terms, a lot of people assumed Simons was closing. The news with the campus, a lot of folks, because when they built Simons, they wanted it to look like it was on campus. So our building looks like all the other buildings, so a lot of people assume that we are part of the campus. We've been fighting that battle for, you know, over 35 years of saying, nope, we're separate from the campus, we're open to the public, come on in. So a lot of those last year had kind of a very negative effect on our memberships and getting folks to come out, because they were like, well, why come out? Why spend the money? You're just going to take a year membership and you're not going to be there. And then I'm going to be out that money. So we're trying to, you know, move forward with that. The foundation is working on doing a membership drive to do some encouragement to get more members to keep on coming out and using the facilities. So we're definitely working on the memberships and getting folks to come back in, because we know that is our revenue source that's going to help with the facility. It's the memberships is our biggest revenue for it as well.
Okay, while you're holding the microphone, just for the sake of it, Mr. Brenninger said, what is Silver Sneakers?
Sure, Silver Sneakers, there's also another program called Silver and Fit, and there's also Renew Active. Those are 3 programs that if you are typically over 65, but if you're on Medicare and you have a Medicare supplemental insurance, a lot of the Medicare supplemental insurances carry a Silver Sneakers program, Silver and Fit, or Renew Active program. So what they are these insurance companies pay this other company to offer these programs, and so we subscribe to that, and we are one of the facilities that you can use that at. So through your Medicare supplemental health insurance program, you might be eligible for Silver Sneakers, Renew Active, or Silver and Fit, and you get to use the facility at no cost to the members. They come in, we have to verify that they're eligible for the program, either any of the 3 programs, and then they're able to come in and use the facility to take classes. We have to offer Silver Sneaker classes and Silver and Fit classes because we're the facility there, so that's part of the package, so we have those offerings. But they get to use the facility for free. We get paid when they come in and use the facility. So if somebody comes in 5 times a month, we get paid for those 5 visits. If they come in 0 times a month, we don't get any payment from them. If they come in 10 times a month, we get paid for those 10 visits. So the more we see the folks, the better it is for us financially, but also it's better for them health-wise, mentally-wise. If the more they come in, the more they come and see our smiling faces and do the classes and talk to their friends and meet new people, helps them out emotionally and mentally as well, too.
Thank you for the explanation. I feel fully informed now. And perhaps I'll do that in 10 years.
There we go.
I'm actually glad that we just got that on camera. That explanation is a really good explanation, in case there are people in the community who didn't know that,
Yep.
and there may be.
There might be, and it doesn't take much. Most of the programs, we just need to know your first name, last name, as it appears on the insurance card, your date of birth, zip code. The Renew Active program does require us to have the member ID number off of your health insurance, your supplemental card. So it's really not too extremely invasive for us to find out if you're eligible for one of the 3 programs. So.
Okay,
I do have a comment about the capital improvements too. I don't know if you're aware. They used to, I think it was between 2010 and 2019, when Simons did the budget, we'd have the budget for the tax levy that would go into the operating budget, and then part of the tax levy, there was a fund, amount of money that got separated in the city and in the county, and then that money was in like a non-lapsing fund, where it built up over time. So our parking lot, when that got redone, that was paid out of that fund there, so it wasn't, you know, a big surprise of it coming up. So parking lot, air conditioners, boilers, water heaters, so lots of good things for capital improvement came out of that fund, but in 2019, that was ended with that program of putting the money away and kind of planning for future needs for the facility, which I think is unfortunate. It doesn't, you know, plan for the future when we know a building's gonna need a roof, a building's gonna need, you know, lots of different things, air conditioners, the swimming pool needs plaster in the pool. I mean, there's just a lot that for future planning. So that's was one thing that was nice, that was something that the natatorium board kind of thought to think to the future, and unfortunately that was when budget cuts, one of the first things that was cut.
thank you. Did you have something further? Did you?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Or I've got a comment. So, obviously, the funding is an issue for Simons, right? So my question is does the city or the county have a means of transportation for elderly or assisted living folks that would be able to get ride assistance to Simons to bring in membership for those silver senior classes or anything like that? That could be a way to easily benefit Simons by a means of transportation from our facilities here in town.
Start with asking the county if you want to address that.
There is a transportation program that we run through Health and Human Services. I'm ignorant to know on all the different qualifications and locations that they take folks to. But it's something to certainly inquire upon, and I don't know, Tracy, if you do have folks that are showing up a transportation provider down?
I know that the transportation like goes up to Viola and brings people into Richland Center for like groceries and stuff like that through the ADRC. Well, that was before COVID. I am assuming they're back up and running that since COVID, but a lot of it was going out to the outlying communities. They had routes that I was aware of. I think they went out to Yuba as well, if I recall correctly, and they would bring the folks into town that couldn't drive so that they would make stops at, you know, the grocery stores were really kind of the big ones, Walmart and the grocery store when we had one.
I know they do different medical transportations as well. If that fits into that realm, I would have to ask.
I'm a hairdresser. It's not my customer. Just this very morning, the lady lives in Muscadet. She brings that service to get her hair done every week. So it is available. And it's a hairdresser. It's not a medical appointment. I mean, we are psychologists to a lot of people. But and she is the only person in the big white, the van they have. It's bigger than a van. She's the only person. So it is out there. And then I have I'm older than 65. Many years ago, I was 65. So when the offering came that it isn't going to cost me anything, go to Simons now, which was wonderful. But I've fought this many times. I don't know how you say it, I don't know how it can be done. Every year, it doesn't cost me a thing to go to Simons, and I'm rewarded with that. But when it comes in the year, I give back to cover my membership. And I know it doesn't happen or able for a lot of people maybe to be able to give that back in any means that they can. But I so wish that we had been able to, that I could be able to complimentary advise someone that maybe at the end of the year you want to give a donation towards Simons, particularly because it hasn't cost them a thing to come, for those that have the means to give back from what they have received. I thought this many years, but I don't know how to do it. Maybe someone else is out there a lot smarter to come up with that terminology, how to put that advertisement out there. Because I do it, and I hope that there'd be more people that would want to do it to help give that financial means support to Simons.
Okay, anything further? Tracy's still got the mic in her hand. Okay, Casey. again. Anything else from any member of the public who came to talk about some? Yes, Sharon?
I just had a thought with what Suzanne said. In the suggestion from the ad hoc committee, marketing was initially put in there, and I think that's where her question could be answered, if there's a marketing committee to pursue those type of things. I think it's, from my standpoint, and I'm somewhat involved with things in the city, I'm not aware of much advertising, and I'm sure that's part of a budget item, but that was just my thought.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Anyone else? Okay, from the committee, any other comments, questions on Simons? Go ahead.
I didn't know if you were ready to move on to that.
No, go, Mr. Brenninger, did you have something?
One thing is, I don't know how you're going to move this forward, but I would suggest concurrent planning. In other words, moving forward with pursuing the YMCA, but also having Plan B and C or whatever. I think that if YMCA doesn't do something imminently, within months, that agreement between the city and the county is in desperate need of revision. So I guess I'm urging a concurrent view forward.
Thanks, Mike. Carson, did you have something?
Oh, I was going to look at Mike's recommendation here. I had a few observations. You want to jot them down or whatever?
I will do that.
Okay. And these are kind of technical. We look down the makeup of the board. City council member who is an active member of Simons. I'm not sure you can require that. We could have a city council that aren't members.
Actually,
And you have to provide a member.
Chris, do we have Chris?
So,
The city attorney can hear you, Mr. Colbert.
good. So I think that's a preemptive act upon the council. It should probably be reworded as a policy preference or something like that. I think your 7 members, when you get on the second page, with the foundation board and Simon's board, creates an 8th member from the language.
That wasn't the intent. The intent was to exchange those and still have 7 members. But it could be 8, it could be 9, or whatever.
Well, we're just raising it as something to tinker with here. Okay. I have a question for Chris. If Simon's, well, I'm getting confused here. Simon's Foundation and the Simon's Board are 2 different entities, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So Simon's Foundation, I believe, can already receive gifts because they're an independent
They're a
organization.
501c3.
Hold on, Tracy.
Yes, they can. And that's the one thing I do have to check on is I'm not sure that a member of the foundation can sit on the Simons board and that a member of the Simons board can sit on the Simons Foundation. The IRS is very strict about having clear lines between a foundation, the 501c3, and the entity itself. So I'm not quite sure. I have to do some research on that, but I'm not quite sure that that's actually possible. It might be against what the foundation is allowed to do.
Okay, but what about people that want to give gifts to the board directly? Have you made any consideration for that?
So that's the way it's spelled out in the existing document. But if the foundation is going to be charged with having the funds for capital improvements, then it would seem like the foundation should be the entity that operates the distribution of the gifts. So I imagine the Simons board could receive the gift and give it to the foundation.
And the grant acquisition and grant writing, a lot of grants are 70-30 or 80-20, which requires an input from the county budget or the city budget. And so the final decision there would not rest with the foundation unless they secure grants totally without government support. those parks. That probably ought to be clarified.
So can I just speak to that? Because I've worked with grants through my community development organization, and oftentimes you can do in-kind instead of money. And so sometimes it's like Simon's employee, a city employee, a county employee can offer some services as in-kind that will meet the requirements of a grant.
Well, my point, Mike, is that you're dealing with two government entities. You can't bind them to future expenses by a foundation. So I think that's right. Chris can talk about that, I think. I wonder if we're pushing the issue of a commission status here. Anyway, those just popped out at me. The last one I have is a motion to eliminate TikTok.
We're supposed to be transferring some ownership there.
I think if the government can be debating it, we probably should talk about that. Okay. Chris McGowan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. That is the city attorney, Mr. Chris McGowan. Okay, so Mr. Culver's concerns, did you hear that, Chris, what he was...
Yes, Mayor, I did, and I think the best that I can do right now is, obviously I took note of these questions, but I'd kind of be speculating or giving you answers that I can't stand behind, because it's pretty broad, and a lot of this with the Simon Center and what's going on right now is at first glance for me. So if any of those questions need to be answered, I need to have time to do the research and give what I would think is a competent answer.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any other questions for the city attorney on that point? Okay. Well, at this point then...
I've got two questions.
Yeah, please.
Could you find out what the membership fees are at YMCA in Madison?
Yes.
And then I'd like to hear what the foundation board thinks of the proposal. I don't want an answer tonight, but just start ruminating, thinking about it, talking about it, and just see what you think of the proposal that's been put together here. And just share that with us at some point in the future, near future. Because, you know, as Mike said, I think we're going to really need to have multiple tracks of conversations going on here. And I'd just like to hear what the foundation's thoughts are. Thanks.
Okay, so we will hear more from and regarding the Madison YMCA. Oh, Melanie, you'll continue on that?
Yes.
Okay, and then I do know there are some individuals who will be returning from their trips to Arizona and other points in the coming weeks that would like to discuss what's been brought up again here tonight, people donating and how to do that going forward. Beyond those 2 points, does anyone on the committee any other opportunities, any other points they want to discuss tonight regarding the sign?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor, but I thought last meeting we called the president of the Simon's board and she was going to do a presentation tonight. Did that fall through, or during the meeting, it wasn't Miss Collins?
Oh, and maybe, yeah,
That was the foundation.
that's the foundation.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to call her. She showed it, I've talked to her twice, I don't know why she's not here, but I'll call her.
Okay.
But she didn't, yeah.
She's on vacation.
Okay, well, she's in, okay, we'll get her here. Okay, we will get Nettie here. I've talked to her about it a couple of times, so she's willing and we'll do that, Melanie.
So 2 things. I am not going to just shoot an email right back to the YMCA. I'm going to take a little time, collect the information. So if anyone has any questions that they feel that maybe we've missed tonight, and you go home and you're kind of ruminating about this and you're like, wait a minute, feel free to shoot me an email, because I probably won't send him something until next week, because I'll have to connect with Tracy and get the financial stuff for this Simons as well. So feel free to shoot me an email on that if anybody has any questions, or you can call me, either one. My second thing I would just like to point out is that I just need everybody to remember that when you are out in the community, if you hear anybody talking about, oh my gosh, they're shutting down Simons, oh, Simons is becoming a YMCA, Simons is this, Simons is that, please just remember that we are 100% in a research phase right now. That's it. There has been no decisions made, nothing is going to the county board, going to city council, nothing. We are just simply researching multiple different avenues because we all want to see Simons succeed, and I would hate to leave a stone unturned and miss something that could have kept it viable. So I would just like everybody to remember that, because I know, you know, Tracy has made comments that people come in and they're like, I don't want to renew my membership. I heard this is happening with Simons. So if we could just be, you know, cognizant of that, that we are just 100% in a research phase right now, and that is all that it is at this point. And Simons will continue on as it has been for this time. That's it.
Okay, and to touch on marketing / PR again, my next appearance on WRCO's morning show will be April 4th. How long has it been, Tracy, since they had you on the morning show?
I was just on last month.
Yeah, I remember you down there.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back?
Sure.
Because I'll bring you in with me,
Okay.
and let's talk about the points you've brought up a couple of times at natatorium that Melanie just touched on. Sort of misconceptions, misperceptions in the community that perhaps we said it here tonight, that Simons is part of the campus, so if it leaves, it goes. Things like that, because you have told us that people have said, I don't know that I want to renew because it'll close, I won't get my money back. Nobody's ever said anything like that. It's not true, and we're trying to prevent exactly that. Maybe we need to talk about that in some detail into a microphone. Would you like to do that?
Yes, I can do that again, because that's what about a month ago, that's what I did on the radio on the morning show. So I think having that re-said is not a bad thing to just repeat and again say, we're here, come on in, memberships are important, come support the facility.
Tuesday, April 4th, 9 a.m.
9 a.m.,
Yeah.
April 4th.
You're usually on Mondays, did you change
Well,
that?
yeah, actually, I got to talk to Phil. I'll confirm. Phil and I are sorting that out.
Okay.
No, don't worry, don't worry.
Well, you have me all confused because I got, my calendar here.
Don't worry. Yeah, my day job schedule is completely different. I just changed day jobs and I now work in the radio station. So I can't be tardy for the morning show and talk that one off, can I? Don't worry, and I'll cover it. But that's where Phil and I are kind of talking this through. It'll get done. Okay, Annie, go ahead.
One last thing, I would like to say thanks to the Red Board for taking the time to look at this and do this, because I'm going to be honest, like I said, I was doing stuff on my lunch break today. It's hard to find time to fit these things in sometimes, so I do really appreciate the work that you're doing on this. Thank you.
Okay. So we will continue to work on everything that you heard here tonight. Does anyone else have anything further for this meeting on this point? Okay, then that will conclude assignments for tonight, and we'll move on to economic development. Okay, and thank you everyone who came and asked questions and commented, by the way. Thank you very much for being here. All right, now, economic development. Ashley, I believe you prepared that? Would you like to begin by discussing that document, and we'll go from there?
I don't think everybody has one, so I'll just pass those out around so
No, I don't.
y'all see it. This is just a sort of a recap from a meeting Clint and I had, and it's a plan that was presented to the Personnel Committee on Monday for the transition of the Economic Development Director. As was discussed at this last meeting of this group, it is apparent that the city is likely to proceed with submitting the final notice of withdrawal, and as such, we need to have a plan for the employee. So this lays out the equipment that the city and the county purchased jointly for the position of Economic Development Director, and a request that the ownership of that equipment would be transferred to the city at no cost, with the exception of 2 landlines which would be returned to the county. It goes over the employee's vacation and sick leave balances and how the city would honor those balances upon transition, as well as some IT considerations for switching networks and email. And then it addresses open projects. So there are 4 projects that are currently open for the county. And this indicates that the director would continue to work on those projects and finish them even after a transition. And so the next steps are somewhat laid out there, and then just a recap of the motion by personnel. So within this, it outlines that the first day of city employment for the director would be April 5th. That's the day following the common council meeting, in which the notice of withdrawal will be considered and potentially adopted.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. To recap for anyone who's not aware, in late December, the city council voted to have the city withdraw from the existing agreement that initially created the economic development position, which is to this point been jointly funded by the city and the county. And according to the terms of that agreement, the city needed to give a 90-day notice. This will all have expired at the end of March. The anticipation, well, reality is the council will vote at the Tuesday, April 4th council meeting. I will not speak in absolutes in advance of a vote, but in talking to the council members, and there are 2 here you can ask, it seems obvious to most that their intent is to confirm that decision. And that's why we're here. Melanie or Carson, since you are on the city council, do you have anything to say to what I just said?
No. No, President.
Nothing I haven't already, no.
I do have a comment and a question.
Okay, we'll get to that in 2 seconds. Okay, so again, that's from that point to this point. The days have been transpiring, and we're nearly to that point where the council will make that decision again. If anyone would like to attend that meeting here, we'll be right here, Tuesday, April 4th, that city council meeting. Mr. Culver?
On your sheet here, Ashley, there should be a step in here for submission to the city council for approval. I'm not sure we've ever done an official approval of the switch.
Do you mean of the notice or of approving that transition?
That transition. We haven't done that yet, have we?
So we've kind of done it a few times through the budget process and multiple meetings approving a transition or taking on or assuming responsibility, but the intent is on the April 4th meeting at council that it would be 2 separate items, one for approving of this plan or a modified version of this plan and thus the transition and assuming responsibility, as well as separately the notice of withdrawal, submitting it.
Okay. I thought maybe we should have a motion, probably be a recommendation from the personnel committee to hire Jason particularly, not just the position.
Correct. And the motion from personnel on Monday was motion to approve transitioning the employer of record from Richland County to the City of Richland Center and waiving a formal hiring process for the position of Economic Development Director effective 4/5/23. So that would be the recommendation coming from personnel to council on the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer that for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyone else?
I got a question. I'm wondering about public records. I mean, I can see where the digital stuff, the county will still have access to that up until the final day that Jason is a county employee, but what about any paper records? You know, because some of the stuff that Jason's working on is confidential and not, you know, not subject to open records law, but I'm sure there's pieces of paper that in his possession that would be considered public record. So how is that going to be addressed, or does it need to be?
So a couple of different elements there. County projects, things that would transition over to us, we would take, and they would, our retention, or record retention rules would apply to it just as they would right now. Elements with his like employee file, we're going to have to kind of do a termination type of a process on our end to take him out of our payroll, to end ETF contributions for retirements and discontinue for health insurance. We would keep those and retain those again according to our retention schedule as a terminated type employee. Papers that would serve the city's interest and continuity can be transferred over. Is that your?
Yeah, that, I mean, it's just, I think about public record stuff, because, that can get a little messy if it's not done correctly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Brenninger.
So, thank you. It appears the die is cast for the future of economic development, at least this position. I want to make, I guess, a closing statement about that as the chair of the Red Board. So I still feel strongly that the best path forward would be for the continuation of an agreement between the city, county, and the existence of the Red Board, that the cooperation and collaboration is a beneficial thing to everybody in the county. I think that we presented a case for why that would be good. However, if it goes the way it appears that it's going to go, there's a few precautions I would throw in there. One is that it's very difficult to keep on task economic development. It tends to become a governmental processing position unless it is forced out into the community, especially the business community, and to be interacting with them. To be everything eliminated from input and direction except city government will enhance that likelihood that it becomes processing rather than active out in the community. So those are things to consider. This is all in the hands of the city, so the city council, so they make the decision on this. There is a question of the future of the Red Board. Obviously, the withdrawal of the city will dissolve the Red Board. It will no longer exist. I think that leaves us as walking home and not having anything to do. I am going to stay involved in economic development, no matter what. Okay, so whether that's with government or with the private sector or good times, bad times, whether we've got an economic development director or not, I'm going to stay involved. So I'm engaged. I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else on the Red Board, and I don't really see a path forward for the Red Board. So if there is a path forward, that would be interesting to hear those ideas, because I don't see anything.
Okay, Mike, would you do me a favor when you talk about concerns about economic development becoming government processing? I think that's the term you used.
Mm-hmm.
How do you mean that?
So the typical role of economic development is to be about the business of, in the business community, I should say, attracting new businesses, looking for expansion of existing businesses, helping with labor force, child care, those kind of things. Government processing would have to do with changing ordinances, zoning administration ordinances, the inner workings of government that make the pathways for economic development to happen. While that is very, very important, if an economic development director is tasked with that or bogged down with that, they will not do the actual core work of economic development. In other words, they'll create pathways, but they won't have people to walk down those pathways. So processing can easily replace the active engagement in the business and economic community to keep it thriving and creating new opportunities for business, for housing, for all of the elements of economic development. Is that any clearer?
Yes, I wanted everyone in the room to hear your concern. Thank you, Mr. Brenninger. Okay. Morty Brewer and I had a phone conversation today. So, as we've said, I guess I would say the city's path forward seems to be determined and will be soon, which then leaves county. And Marty's statement to me on the phone today was, we need a plan. And I agree. So I'm going to open this to any representative from the county that wants to comment. Different things have been stated in these committee meetings. Perhaps the county would hire an individual to work in the townships, perhaps contract somebody. Does anyone representing the county have a comment or thought on how the county may move forward with economic development?
Mr. Mayor, I think that Jason Glassbender needs help in the office, and it was a few weeks ago. It looked like, well, the county still wants to provide some funds here, and maybe that can be in the form of help for Jason. Maybe rather than eliminate that job, you expand it, and we still would like to see that explored, because economic development is very important to the city and the county, and Richland Center being the largest city, the only city in the county. So they're not mutually exclusive by any means, okay?
Agreed.
I want everyone to understand that, but we will have some funds, and they're just going to be it's an odd situation for us to have funds that aren't allocated and spent about 3 times. So I think we'll have Clantor, his successor, really explore and the idea of contracting, maybe with Southwest Regional Planning. They've got some good people, they've expanded staff, and I'm not sure how that works for Jason though, right? That part of it bothers me. If we contract with staff from Southwest Regional Planning, how does that give Jason the help he needs?
Okay, since you just touched on something for the public's knowledge, Mr. Langreck, what is your last day with Richland County?
April 14th, sir.
And you are going to?
City of Platteville, sir.
As city administrator?
City manager, sir.
City manager, okay.
Slight difference, but yes.
Okay, and I had you say that because again, there's a camera right there. And I didn't want people watching that saying, why did Marty say that?
Sure.
Okay, so you're done in a couple of weeks?
Yes, sir.
And then headed, okay.
But certainly a phone call away to be brought back in and ask questions and interrogated as appropriate.
Interrogated as appropriate. Madam Wolf, you have military experience, trained in fact by Mr. Renish, no doubt, that's no joke. Ken trained her on how to deal with the nastiest of nasties in the desert when she was in the National Guard. We've got interrogators all around you, sir.
But Clint has military
I
experience.
know, yes. Certainly familiar with both of them, so.
Okay, well, okay, so do you have any comments on perhaps the county's next step with economic development?
My next steps would be to approach Marty's Finance and Personnel Committee, which he is the chair, and say, okay, this is the change. Financially, you've had this much money set aside for the 2023 budget. Relationship changes now, and that money, as Marty has just said, is kind of free, and what do you want to do with that? I built a budget around the context of taking a defunct CDBG funds from Housing Authority and say, we're going to transplant that to continue our membership with economic development and encouraging workforce housing and housing initiatives. So that was kind of the methodology and the premise on transporting some funds away from those folks. So there are some considerations on the intent of that budget money for this year, as well as then what you want to do in future years. And that kind of gets to be a financial driver again from the county's perspective. Now, in having Jason as a employee of the county, we still technically have that position on our authorization table. So that's another conversation. Piece 2 is I'm going to remove that from our authorization table And I know too, we've talked with Administrator Oliphant and folks from the city on what it looks like to have Jason continue to help in those county capacities, if it's a hourly charge or an annual type of a membership contribution, and those conversations still plan on continuing to have. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does. It wasn't a question as much as an opportunity for you to give your thought. So I'm glad you did. Mr. Rennish?
Well, I don't sit on finance, I'm on the public safety in Pine Valley, so I can either get you health care or arrested, so I don't have anything.
But we'll let you speak at the finance.
I was going to say, do you have thoughts though on what you would recommend?
As I've said before, and Marty and everybody said it, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, what affects the city affects the county and vice versa. So if Administrator Langrick and Finance has set something aside, I think we would behoove us to figure out a way to work with Jason and get him some more help.
Thank you. Okay, I'll come back to the city representatives. Melanie Carson, anything, any response or thoughts on what you just heard from the county?
So I 100% agree that Jason needs help. And my idea, which I had sent out to the city and county members, was the county use their funds to hire a grant writer to assist him, because there's a lot of untapped money out there. And I think if Jason had someone to assist him where they're identifying the grants, he has someone to help write the grants. I think that would, what was the one that you guys just sent in, Ashley, the infrastructure grant?
$2.9 million.
$2.9 million. So honestly, you could get one grant and it would cover that person's wages and benefits, sometimes 10 times over. So that is my thought on where I think that the county would be best suited to put those funds for someone to assist Jason, because like I said, there's a lot of untapped resources out there. I think he just needs that extra person, because I don't think he has the time right now to be writing grants.
Okay, and I will agree with everyone from the county who stated correctly that you cannot and should not separate the city from the county. It's impossible. We're a small county with one city in it. It's a small city at that. There are less than 18,000 of us in the whole place. You can't pull one apart from the other, and it'd be foolish to try that. So I encourage the county, the things you're saying, if you've got funds set aside, I absolutely encourage the county to continue to work on economic development. The city's doing what it's doing for reasons you've heard several times. I absolutely hope the county continues. By all means. Mr. Culver?
Yes, the only reflection I would have is that let's not move too quickly and let's not move too slowly. There's going to be some changes and evolution and development, and out of that, my guess is there will be some obvious needs that arise to respond to. And say the same thing to you about the red board. It's not precipitous, it's more like a slope. But let's not let it drag on all summer long. You know, they should begin to emerge rather timely what the real needs are and then respond to them.
Thanks. Red board members, anything on this point?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything additional.
Okay. Madam Oliphant, anything on this point?
I'll just point out that also on that sheet was the matter that we'll need to, Clint mentioned that he'll be going to the finance committee, but we do need to determine if this is approved and it goes forward, how to deal with the contribution for this year, as the county typically bills us and then we pay them back, but they've paid from January 1 until whenever it ends. So we will have to discuss that at council, perhaps provide a recommendation to the county, as Clint will do as well. And so just take that into consideration when we talk about providing assistance, because there is the matter of this year for sure that we need to deal with dollars already spent.
Okay. Public, anyone have any questions or comments with regards to economic development? Yes, sir.
I got a question. So how much
How much money is the county going to use or subsidize for a person to help Jason?
Got that amount, Clint?
I can tell you it's about 63,000 or so that the shared operational expense is, and we've spent about, we're about a quarter of the way into the year, but it's still going to be a decision that's going to have to be made by Marty and his committee.
So if for Melanie's comments, for sure, get somebody to write grants, would that person be writing grants for Simons also? And if it's a joint effort between the county and the city to make sure that Simons withstands as being a part of the community, isn't it the best interest of the city and the county to make that happen?
So in a case like that, that person could be directed to do that.
Would be all departments.
Yeah,
All departments,
exactly.
Simons is certainly an economic driver in the community, so yes.
Then my question is why hasn't that been happening already? If we're all a joint effort in keeping Simons going?
So to get into the operations on it, I would caution on how much you want to expand, because there is a lot of grant opportunities for many of plethora of different functions that happen in the county. If it was expanded to be able to tap it for everything from the city's grant perspective and the county's, you'd need more than one person to try to accomplish that. The other element of it too is it's like it still comes as an operational expense. The monies that come in from grants typically don't cover the expense of having the employees, compensations and such underneath an operational budget. They typically end up getting you funds for capital types of expenses. So while it might pay for itself 10 times over or more, you might not be able to exactly offset those other types of costs. So it's a great thing if you could have it, and it does help you pay for things if you can get it through, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to alleviate the expenses of having a grant writer.
Right, but didn't Ken say that the county could operate the Simons system by themselves, but they needed money for the infrastructure of the facility, which the grants could help take care of that?
It certainly could, but it still arrives at the same type of an expense type of a thing. So,
But good thoughts, and you're right, why haven't we done this before? Well, I don't know.
it can, and then there's opportunities that are out there, but just the one that's applied for it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it, and sometimes you don't get it necessarily for projects that are of the highest priority. Like an example of the situations that you would apply for grants that you know might not work out is you have to still set up a capital expense project for next year. So trying to put that towards grants on a maybe usually gets a little bit challenging. It's usually the projects maybe further down the road that, well, if it doesn't work out and the grant doesn't come through, we still need to do short-term borrowing or some other mechanism to make sure we have it in line. So grants are great, and if you can get them, that is awesome and amazing, but sometimes it doesn't always solve your most immediate and pressing needs when it comes to capital projects as well. Not to make excuses by any means, but those are some of the realities that you deal with in trying to chase grant money to help offset your operational and your levy expenses.
Well, another way of saying that, you can't set your budget based on grants. I mean, you can certainly hope and anticipate, but you gotta have solid plan Bs.
Okay, so nothing further from the Red Board. Anything else from the county representatives on economic development? City, I don't. Melanie, Carson? Okay, public, any questions, comments on economic development tonight? Mr. Perry?
While some would dwell on the negative, I'd like to dwell a little bit on how positive this night has been. Having been around city government for 50 years or so, up till about 5 years ago, there was absolutely no cooperation between the county and the city. We've just gone through a year when the county was forced to try to right their ship, which was listing badly financially, and by the city withdrawing from a contract, this could have been a disaster. This could have been pulled the county and the city right back apart. Hasn't happened. You're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Thanks, Rod, and I think you hear that when you hear city, county, red board all saying you can't separate the city from the county.
Can't be done.
Not unless you want to create a disaster, in my opinion, but anyway. Okay, any other comments or questions for tonight? Okay, next meeting date.
So I believe the recommendation came from the county that there would be a series of 3 meetings. And so we fulfilled that, but that doesn't mean more meetings can't occur.
Well, the first question, Melanie, with regards to the YMCA, because I do think these folks here should hear the next step. How much time do you think you're gonna, I know you don't, some of this is out of your hands. Madison has to do what they do, but from that standpoint, when do you want to be back here?
That's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because again, it's, once I hand over that information to him, it's kind of waiting for him to sift through it and talk to his team out there to see what their next step is. So I don't know if I can put a definitive timeline on that. I mean, I could ask him for a response within a certain amount of time. That doesn't guarantee I'm going to get it.
Okay. On economic, well, that's kind of, Simons is going to be, I think, the driving topic of this committee going forward. I want to make sure the next time we meet, we have an update there. I also would like to invite some more folks who weren't able to be here. I mentioned a couple times that aren't back from their trips to the south yet. Mid-April, I think we need a little window for you, and I got to get some folks home. We've been meeting on Thursday nights. Is that still good for people going forward? Is it bad for anyone? Doesn't work? Or
I mean, unless you want to meet on Clint's last day and make him come for one last hurrah or something.
And bring pizza, by all means.
Just a point of interest that if the city takes the anticipated action, there will be no red board.
I understand that. I also would love it if you came anyway.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to make a comment on the county's committee structure document. They still have language on there of a city-county committee.
Okay.
And I think the last time we exercised using that committee, we had some folks come in and we talked about diversity in the workforce. This was, I think it was in regards to trying to reach out more to the folks in the Latin community and trying to get them involved with some different initiatives.
It was.
So you still have language out there, Chair Brewer, Mayor Coppernoll, on the county's end of it, of perhaps bringing that to attention and saying, do we want to reinvigorate and having a city-county committee and what that membership might look like, if it is just strictly a folks of the city and of the county board of the city council, or if you would want advisory members perhaps to talk on those types of elements as well.
Well, one point on that, Mr. Culver is not running for re-election, and therefore, at some point here in April, he's done. So there will be at least one new member of this committee. Maybe we shouldn't set a date tonight other than to announce that there will be one, because we need to do this right, and we gotta know when we'll have the information to meet. Okay.
I would also add that in the original motion was for an ad hoc committee chaired by the mayor, and that you were appointing the people that would participate, so appoint them.
Right, okay. We did, but specifically, it was what I was appointing were 3 representatives of the city. And I appointed myself, yourself, and Melanie. I did not appoint the members of the county that are here, or the members of the Red Board that are here. So.
Citizens.
I'm aware, thank you, sir. All right, so what we'll do, to the next date, I don't think we should set one yet because it's important. The reason we're due the next meeting is to discuss Simons. We need to have everything ready for the conversation. There will be a next meeting. We will announce the date. We'll make sure it gets radio, Facebook, the whole treatment. But I don't think we should set a meeting date tonight. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yep.
I think, Mike, you had mentioned it, that regardless of what happens with the Y or anything else, the agreement needs to be redrafted.
Simon's agreement.
Correct, yes. So should, in the meantime, that be tasked out to the attorneys or something?
Yes. Motion to instruct. Go ahead.
My experience with working with the attorneys, though, is they're going to want to have policy-driven types of things that they're going to be assessing legally versus them coming up with the ideas for it. So I think that you need to put together administrator folks and some folks off of your council to, to lay out the groundworks on this is what we want to do so they can assess if you can legally do it.
Mr. McGowan, did you hear that?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with what Glenn said. I can't, there's only so many things I can do. I can do the legal part, but I do need the information to plug it all in.
Okay. Well then, do we want city attorney and corporate counsel for the county involved in this, or one of them? How do you guys want to proceed on that? Because to get it to them, we will have to work on what specific instructions we give them, and thanks for that, Clint. I thought we had this as one.
No, I'm sorry. So I guess from our perspective, the things that I think, Chair Brewer, that might be beneficial, we have a rules and strategic planning committee that is in charge of our committee structure document. It may be appropriate to have a conversation with those folks, Marty, and say, do we want to try to change now our city-county committee to having oversight on issues including Simon Center? From there then, to kind of configuring what that body looks like, you can still task tonight of saying, hey, we would like our administrator, our city administrator, and our county administrator. We don't need to make any types of motions necessarily for that. We can act a little bit left and right of our sectors to try to get together and say, and draft out at least a document off of the recommendations from Red Board, encouraging or taking a look from our perspective administratively on what can be put into that document, and then trying to stand up at the same time a city county committee again and what you folks want that to look like, and perhaps giving them the first kick at what that looks like. At the same time, that document too should be probably heavily involved with Director Goldman and understanding from a foundation board as well on what they're going to get behind and support, knowing that we have partners out there too that we're asking to come to the table on this. So that would be my twofold kind of option is tell your administrators to start kicking at this thing, using their people, and then from a county level, come back with a recommendation to the city council on what a city-county committee looks like. Does that sound like a reasonable
Using this
course?
as a starting template.
Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor, before we adjourn,
yes, sir.
I do believe that the Red Board will cease to exist, will not meet again. So I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Red Board for all the fine work and planning and development and pushing issues forward for public discussion that heretofore had not been addressed. And I would like to thank Mike Renninger in particular for being the point of the spear on those issues. And I want to thank all the members of the Red Board, even the newest members of the Red Board, for all the work that they've done. So thank you. And it was a good thing, and it did its job.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Marty. Okay, so then, are we instructing the city and county administrators, I guess, to be doing work on this, on what we want city attorney and corporate counsel to do with the Simons agreement? Is that what the committee wants? Okay. You want that in a motion, or do you just want to do the work? Because we're going to be back here with it one way or the other. Okay, they got it. Okay, we are not going to set a meeting date tonight. We will set one. We will publicly announce it. Barb, I promise I will call you. There she is. I promise I will call and tell you when it is. And we will meet again. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Are you adjourned for
I think
everybody?
You're attorney for the city, right?
Well, okay, we can do it however you want, for the city. Is there,
Motion to
okay, is there a second? All right.
Motion, Marty.
City.
We're good.
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, then I think the county just adjourned. Red board?
Motion to adjourn.
How about this? All in favor of adjourning, all three of us, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
When your agenda is completed and your work is done, it's okay to adjourn.